Good evening, everyone.
Good
Welcome
evening.
to Line Connect by Deborah Rise Movement or DRM. Our calling at DRM is to give voice to the voiceless, to advocate for the broken, and to rescue the abused. You can find out more about us on www.deborahrise.org. We also have a helpline number, which I will be putting up later in the chat window. And if you want to stay connected with us, I will be putting in the link to our WhatsApp group in the chat window. Health versus society versus the Bible. We women face this triangle of confusion when we are trying to conceive, are pregnant, or are well into our pregnancy. So many times we are scared to take certain medicines, maybe for an existing condition that we have, for fear that it may harm the life that we are nurturing and carrying inside our womb. I remember facing this problem when I had to stop certain medicines as soon as I conceived, which led to other complications for me. But I had to endure it for the precious life growing inside me. The situation worsens when an abnormality is detected in the fetus or when an abortion is suggested. At times like this, there are so many voices in our head. The annoying comments of society in one corner of our head, the comforting words of our loved ones in another, and our own thoughts in another. What do we do? Where do we get our final answer from? To help us with this, we have Dr. Mercy Ramya Florence talking to us today on abortions and fetal medicines. After completing her MBBS from Tirunelveli Medical College and DGO from Madras Medical College, Dr. Mercy did her fellowship in fetal medicine at Adi Center of Advanced Fetal Medicine in Bangalore. Currently, she is a leading fetal medicine consultant and the managing director of Mom and Me Clinic and Fetal Medicine Center in Bangalore. She is passionate about serving the less privileged and saving the lives of babies. Her expertise is in diagnosing fetal abnormalities and in invasive fetal procedures. Without further delay, please welcome Dr. Mercy Ramya Florence.
Hello, thank you everyone. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity. I'm extremely sorry for keeping you all waiting, but I had 3 emergencies and I couldn't say no to those patients. So I got a little held up. And the unborn, the ones inside us, don't know our schedules, don't know our what is happening in the outside world. They are in their own sweet world. And fetal medicine is in which, for me, my patients are the babies inside, and I cannot tell them turn left, turn right, show me your face, show me your back. No, I just have to wait for them to turn at their own sweet time. And so I'm so sorry I couldn't join on time. And I thank you all for giving me this opportunity. So I made a small PowerPoint about the topic today. I'd like to talk a little bit about how I got passionate about fetal medicine. My mom is a practicing gynecologist in Tirunelveli. So initially, mom used to, as a gynec, you get a lot of patients coming and asking you for miscarriages and like if we conceived too early, we just got married, we still have, there are so many funny reasons they give, like they want to travel for a year before they want to conceive and so many things. And mom, initially she did give MTP pills, do MTP, so many people, and then she realized that the same person kept getting pregnant and coming again and again. Said she has done abortions 4 times consecutively for the same mother. And then she was like, well, I'm doing something wrong here. I'm encouraging them to get pregnant and be careless and do this. So then I'm just giving you a gist about it. We had a tragedy in our family life. I'm not telling that is linked to this or if you abort and you're going to be punished for it, nothing like that. But my brother, my own brother, he's older to me by 3 years. He lost his first born. The baby had bilateral medullary sponge kidney disease, which was undiagnosed during the pregnancy. That is a fatal condition. There is no treatment. Both the kidneys cannot function, zero function of the kidneys. But that was not diagnosed, and the baby was born around 28 weeks, little preterm, but was in the ICU for 3 days, and then they came to the diagnosis, and then the baby passed away. That day, my mom, at that time, I was joining college to become a gynecologist. And that day, my mom called and told, way before that, she had accepted the Lord and she had stopped doing the terminations way before that. But then she called me up that day after we lost my brother's firstborn, and she said, Amma, I don't know whether there is a link to that or this, but strongly give me a word that though you become a gynecologist, you are not going to stop the life of one more being, the mistake that I have done. And then that has gone deeply into me. So from the time I have finished my MBBS, become a gynec, and now practicing fetal medicine, I feel strong in me that the fetus inside is voiceless, and there's nobody to talk on behalf of that. And I have seen so many patients where voluntarily, they come to me and they'll tell me, this is the first baby. I'll put the probe and I'll see there'll be a gross abnormality. Then I'll ask them, are you sure this is your first? Whenever I see a gross abnormality, I ask them, are you sure this is your first pregnancy? Then they'll tell me, no, doc, actually, when we were newly married, 60 days periods was postponed. I didn't even check. I just took some pills. And invariably, I see people, the babies coming with gross abnormalities, having a history of voluntarily stopping a pregnancy. Many, many times. I cannot put a percentage on it. Probably I should start noting them down and telling how many of it I need to do a study on it. But right now I don't have data, but I have invariably, when I see a fatal abnormality and I ask the mother, then when we dig into the history, they come up, yeah, we did postpone, yeah, we did that, we did this. There will be something where they have stopped a life by themselves. And so this is the background of how I got into fetal medicine and how I decided to fight for the cause of the fetus. Okay, so now I'll share, I made a PowerPoint. So let me open it up and, okay. So I'm going to talk on the topic of abortion and its implications on our society. What is abortion? Abortion is the termination. I'd like to talk about in the colloquial language and then in the medical terms. Abortion is the termination of a pregnancy by removal or expulsion of an embryo or a fetus. An abortion that happens without intervention. That is, you did nothing, but the baby came out on its own, or you bled on its own, or the heartbeat stopped on its own, is called a miscarriage. In medical terms, it is called medical termination of pregnancy when it is done voluntarily for various reasons. So what is medical termination of pregnancy? If any of you want me to stop somewhere and explain in detail, please feel free to stop me. It is the termination of pregnancy before viability. So according to medical terms, they consider the viability as when a baby, viability is not when we consider it alive. No, that is not viability. But many scans are called the first confirmatory scans are called viability scans, but that is not correct. That is wrong. According to the definition, viability is when you expect a baby to come out and survive on its own. So what is viability? Viability is the period at which the fetus can be separated from the mother and can survive on its own, which is approximately 28 weeks. In abroad countries, it has even come down up to 24 weeks. They can make babies survive 24 weeks onwards. In India, right now, it's around 28 to 30 weeks. Beyond that, say a baby, so till 28 weeks, you call it an abortion or a medical termination of pregnancy. So when we take a history, if they say that we delivered around the 25th week, we would consider that an abortion. If they delivered the 29th week, we call that a delivery. That is not called an abortion. After that, between 28 to 37 weeks, it is called a preterm delivery. So then we'll come to there is an act that was passed by the Government of India. It is called the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. It was passed by the Parliament in 1971 and it came into effect from 1972. Okay, why did we need an act called the MTP Act? I mean, what is the big issue that happened that they thought that we have to pass an act in the parliament in this regard? It is estimated that 15.6 million abortions take place in India every year. Imagine the birth rate that is already existing in our country. Add to it a 15.6 million unborn babies that is happening in India every year. A significant proportion of these are expected to be unsafe. So the government was worried about the unsafe abortions. That is the dyes and the local untrained people inserting sticks into the mother or inserting chemicals, acid into the mother. So many crude techniques were being followed. And the mother had sepsis and pus coming from the uterus. And even we had mothers dying of septicemia and so many conditions. Unsafe abortion is the third largest cause of maternal mortality, leading to death of how many women each day? 10 women each day in our country are dying due to unsafe abortions. So the government was worried about this and hence passed the Medical Termination of Pregnancy Act. So there were 89,447 abortions we have statistics only till 2012. After that, we don't have statistics yet. In 2007 to 2011. So in about 5 years' time, there were 89,447 abortions. Of this, 67.1%, only 33% came to the hospital and asked the doctor or took a safe method of abortion. There were 253 abortion-related maternal deaths. That is around 0.3% people were dying because of this unsafe abortions. So what are unsafe abortions? Unsafe abortions are procedures conducted by untrained providers and or in unhygienic conditions. Why? So why do they need to go for an unsafe abortion? Okay, she's pregnant. She doesn't want a pregnancy. Why doesn't she come to the doctor? Why does she go for an unsafe abortion? Unintended. Mostly those pregnancies are unintended or unwanted. Okay, why are they unintended? Because of the lack of knowledge of contraception. So we call that, and in medical terms, an unmet need for contraception. There is a huge unmet need for contraception in India. And why is there a huge unmet need for contraception in India? Because of the society, the culture of our society. Talking about sex education to kids is considered taboo. Even by mothers, even me, being a doctor, my daughter is 12 now. I just gone through my head so many times. When do I talk to her? When do I tell her? I mean, I have told her, I mean, she's become, I mean, I tell her about the menstrual cycle and all that, but to talk about conception, to talk about getting conceived and all the process, I'm like, okay, 12 years is too early. She needs to wait. But this psychology in India that and even when the kids become 16, even when they become 18, they do not get the sex education that they need. This we call an unmet need for contraception, an unmet need for sex education in India. That is the main reason for unintended or unwanted pregnancies, because the people who are getting pregnant, and all these unwanted pregnancies are from 18 to 22 age group. And they do not know what to do to prevent be without getting pregnant. And so that is the reason. And they get pregnant and then they cannot tell their parents, they cannot tell anybody. So they themselves go to dyes or get unsafe abortions done. So unintended or unwanted pregnancies are due to unmet need for contraception or sometimes contraceptive failure or rape. These are the main three reasons when you call a pregnancy unintended or unwanted. When a woman is legally not allowed to abort or lacks access to trained providers. So this is when she is forced, this is what the government thought. Okay, when we are not legally allowing them to abort, they try to go and do it behind back doors, and that is why they are dying. So let us legalize the process of abortion. This is what the thought process that went into the government before they launched the MTP Act. When a woman is legally not allowed to abort or lacks access to trained providers, she is forced to go to illegal providers who may be untrained or may perform the procedure under unhygienic conditions. So what are the factors associated with unsafe abortion? Mostly it is young maternal age 20 to 24. Next thing is illiteracy. They do not understand safe period of contraception, which is a safe period to have sex. They do not understand what are the various techniques of contraception that can be used. So illiteracy is another factor associated with unsafe abortion. And then next is rural residents. People in rural areas do not have access to hospitals, or even if they do, they have only one hospital and they feel shy to go there because that doctor would know their mother and the entire village will come to know about it. So the people residing in rural area shy away from going to the doctor for unwanted pregnancies. Then in Muslim religion, it is against abortion, and I mean, at least to the extent that I have seen, many Muslim patients, they refuse abortions. And I don't know whether it is given in their Quran or not, but they say we are advised not to do it. It's not good to do it. So many Muslims go against abortion. And the next one is scheduled caste and social status they are in. Then poor, if they fall in the very low socioeconomic status, they cannot afford a hospital abortion. Then they don't have surviving children. That is another thing. This is the first time they're getting pregnant. They don't have any child. And many educated people fall under this category. They don't want, their career is more important, their travel is more important, their hobbies are more important, having fun is more important rather than having the children. So no surviving children. Or the another unknown, all the children are female. So this is a female, we've heard about it, female feticide. So when they are already having female children, then they go get the sex determined. And in case this is also a female, then they go and get unsafe abortion. They contribute to the fact an unsafe abortion category. So these are the factors in which people go for unsafe abortion. So what did the MTP Act do? So the government thought if we bring about the MTP Act, we are legalizing abortion. So people don't have to go for the unsafe and unhygienic practices. They will walk up to the hospital and will provide service providers. They legalize the doctors, they equip the doctors to go ahead and perform abortions. So what does the MTP Act do? It lays down rules about it. Who can perform it, where it can happen, and why it can be done. What are the reasons you can get? Who can perform it? Up to 12 weeks, the government, in the 1972 Act, it said up to 12 weeks, one doctor can just see, okay, if the one doctor agrees that we can go ahead with an abortion, it can be done. But 12 to 20 weeks, two doctors have to consent for it. Where it can happen in any hospital registered. Why it can be done? It virtually, the one reason it gave was contraceptive failure. That was the reason everybody documented, actually. The other reasons were my mother not being mentally all right, or mother's life at risk, or something like that. But one reason given was contraceptive failure. So everybody used to walk up to us and say, oh, we had a contraceptive failure. We did use contraception and it was a failure. So that was a loophole in this act, and anybody could use that loophole and terminate. It legalized abortions up to the 20th week of gestation. So conditions where it can be done. So these are the conditions where the government allowed it to be done. When continuation of pregnancy is a risk to the life of the pregnant woman, when there is substantial risk that the child, if born or dead, would seriously handicap, the child would be handicapped, when pregnancy is caused due to rape, or when pregnancy is caused due to failure of contraceptives. See, this is a simple name, everybody could do it. Pregnancy is caused due to failure of contraceptives used by married woman or her husband. So some failure of contraceptive. Next. So the latest amendment, 2020, the government of India has amended the act further. The medical termination of pregnancy 2020 was introduced on March 2 and passed on March 17th. It amends the act to increase the upper limit for termination from 20 to 24 weeks. It has now up to 6 months, it is legal to terminate any pregnancy. And after 24 weeks also, you can terminate. All you have to do is prove that the baby's abnormality is lethal. And you can do it, all you have to do is, the medical board should agree to it. So the Act removes the limit of 24 weeks in case of substantial fetal abnormalities and constitutes medical boards at the state level. There are medical boards at the state level to which you can go, give a written petition-like thing, and they'll go through the ultrasound scan reports, and then they'll say, okay, done. So in that case, even up to 9th month, you can terminate pregnancies. It also states that with the advancement of medical technology, there is a scope to, so why this amendment? The government are now blame the technology. Now the technology is so advanced that people are able to detect so many abnormalities. So let us go ahead and stop the abnormal babies. Like, why do you want that to be born? So it also states that the advancement of medical technology has a scope to increase the upper limit for terminating pregnancies, especially for vulnerable women and in cases of severe fetal abnormality. So now we come, so why this act has been amended now? Because of advances in science and technology, because we fetal medicine consultants and many others in this field, many doctors, we are going on to diagnose more and more. The scan machines have become so advanced that we can pick up even minute things while the baby is inside. So the advances that have come up, I don't know whether many of you have heard about the Department of Fetal Medicine. Fetus is while the baby is inside the mother, and now gynecologists, fetal medicine is a super specialization in gynecology. You can become a fetal medicine specialist or an infertility specialist like that. So fetal medicine, and then reproductive medicine. Assisted reproductive technology, ART, has advanced in a huge way. People are very career oriented. All the women are career oriented, and I'm not blaming anyone. Yes, you should be. And with the career being then career oriented, they want to postpone their pregnancies till they're 35. And then once they are beyond 35, the hormones, the cycle doesn't work properly, stress levels come in, and then the in-laws and everybody starts saying, oh, you're married for 5 years, you've not conceived yet, oh. And then cortisol level shoots up, and whatever they do, they try to get pregnant, it doesn't. Cortisol is a stress hormone that is released, and that just creates havoc in the menstrual cycle. And then once you're stressed about the process of conceiving, it's very difficult to conceive. So I generally tell my patients, get the first one done. Don't, it's not worth it. People will keep talking, people will keep bugging you. Get the first one done, and then you can space for the next one, but don't postpone the first one. So, but with people trying to micromanage their reproductive career, they want to micromanage when they'll get their chums, when they will get their conceive, when they will ovulate. They want to micromanage their reproductive cycle also. So with people micromanaging that, infertility has become the common outcome now. So with infertility on the rise, assisted reproductive technologies also have gone on the rise. So because of these advances in fetal medicine, advances in reproductive medicine, we are seeing a lot of abortions happening. People are like, it's just like they go to a counter, get a tablet, and then done. The baby is done. Nobody is giving value to the life that is inside. Science is to be blamed mostly for it. And then now I'd like to talk a little bit about my department, like what is fetal medicine? What do we do? NT scan is being done in the 3rd month of pregnancy. Mostly this time we diagnose Down syndrome. I think most of you would have heard about Down syndrome. Down syndrome is because of extra copy of chromosome 21 that is present. We call it trisomy 21. I mean, that's the most common type of Down syndrome. There are other Robertsonian translocation type of Down syndrome too, but most common it is trisomy 21. Okay, but Down syndrome is not a fatal condition. We do not have to diagnose it early on, but I feel it is a right of the mother to know. The diagnosis can be made, yes, but then whether they choose to act and what they want to do. Abroad and all, they have a lot of support system for Down syndrome babies. There are many societies, but in India, sadly, the support system for mentally retarded children, physically handicapped children, cerebral palsy children, Down syndrome babies is very, very poor. You hardly, even autistic children, you struggle to put them in a school. You struggle for the society to accept them. So in India, when we diagnose a baby with Down syndrome, 99.9% go ahead and terminate it. And the Fetal Medicine Society thinks and educates all of us that NT scan is a must and you have to tell them. But we never advocate them to terminate. But in India, I've noticed as soon as they realize that the baby, in the scan, we cannot see the chromosome. So what we diagnose in the scan is just whether the baby is having high risk. And then after the scan reports are done, we go ahead. The confirmatory procedure is amniocentesis. We put a needle under ultrasound guidance and we aspirate the fluid from around the baby and we send it to the lab. And that the amniotic fluid contains the fetal cells, which under the microscope, we can very clearly see whether the 21st chromosome is a trisomy or not. And it's not only that, we can rule out all chromosomal disorders in all the 23 pairs of chromosomes. So that is majorly done around the 1st trimester. That is called the 1st trimester screening or Down syndrome screening. And then that is done up to 14th week. Then we come to the anomaly scan. Anomaly scan is when you diagnose whether all the organs from the head to foot are properly formed. Around the 20th week, we expect majority of the organs to complete their formation. Of course, they'll keep growing in size and all that after that, and kidneys and hearts keep evolving. But otherwise, majority of the organs are formed. Like if there are anything fatal, we'll get to know by then. So that is why the government has fixed the termination at 20 weeks, because by then we get to know. So the government fixed the limit of termination at 20 weeks. But then now it has increased it to 24 weeks. Then fetal biophysical profile is a scan that we do nearing delivery to see whether the baby's fluid is normal, the blood flow to the baby is maintained, the placenta is good, what is the baby's weight. That is done around the last pregnancy. So these are the scans that we majority do. Then what caused this need for advancements? Why has science advanced to such an extent? See, nothing will grow without a need being there. There is a, see, when there is a demand, now example, COVID situation, demand for masks and hand sanitizers. Everybody is selling masks, hand sanitizers, mass production. So only when there is a need or a demand, something happens. So the need for advancement, how did it happen? That was driven by the human need for perfection. Everybody says, doctor, we get pregnant only once or twice, and we want the baby to be perfect. Nobody wants to have a slightest bit of imperfection. Say we say that the baby's nasal bone is a little small, or the baby's head is a little big, or the baby's something, they want to go and terminate. Nobody wants to put up even with a tiny little bit of imperfection. This is the main cause because of the human need or the greed for perfection. Okay, we all want things to be perfect. Then what do we do with the imperfects? People don't realize that physically abnormal babies, structurally, or rather I should say structurally abnormal babies need not be mentally abnormal. And even if they're mentally abnormal, that they are a human being. That is most of them refuse to see that a physical deformity doesn't make them non-living or they can be discarded. No. So what do we do with the imperfect? That is the main question in the world today. So this is just a few of my pictures. If you can see on the top of the screen, this is a 6-weeker. See, it's a 6-week pregnant. This is the uterine cavity. This round thing is the yolk sac, and this is the small thing is the fetus. These are all 3D pictures, and this is around the 20th week. This is the baby's nose and eyes and lips and hands. This is just for you to get an idea of how much science is advanced and what all we can see while the baby is inside. Can you see the tiny little fingers over here? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. This is again the other baby, the baby that's a little shy. And can you see 2 legs here? So the legs, and this is the umbilical cord that is running in between the legs. These are all 3D reconstructions of the babies. Okay. Then comes the question about assisted reproductive technology. The question that most often comes to me in my head is, I keep reminding myself, I am not God. I keep telling this comment to me when I'm counseling the patients. Invariably, we doctors, especially fetal medicine specialists and our reproductive medicine specialists, we are put in a position where the patients will just ask us, doctor, what would you suggest? We can so easily say, yeah, I think you should stop the pregnancy. It is so easy to just say that, because they'll ask zillion questions and that's an easy way out. They'll keep repeating. We have to spend at least an hour talking to a patient after the abnormality has been diagnosed. So I keep telling myself, no, we are not God. No, I keep telling them repeatedly the same. I keep putting out the options to them. So are we playing on this picture that I have taken here? This is a zygote, and that is a 4-cell stage. Okay, this is what we call, it's in the slides to come, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis. We call it PGD or PGS, pre-implantation genetic screening. What is happening with artificial reproductive technology like IVF? The sperm and the ovum are taken, and then they are fused in a test tube. And then if the family has a history of chromosomal issues or of genetic issues or some inborn errors of metabolism or some genetic disease, you can take that when in the 3-cell state zygote or the 5-cell state zygote, you take that embryo, you put it in a microscope and you put a needle into it. You take a biopsy of the embryo and you can screen the embryo before it is put into the mother of all the chromosome or the genetic defects that is in the baby. And then you can terminate or you can stop that, or you can. They normally in this artificial reproductive technology, what they do is they don't make 1 or 2 zygotes. Because why? Because they spend $1 lakh or $1.5 lakh for each sitting of in vitro fertilization. And who can afford that much? And who can keep affording it? So at one shot, what they do is they take 3 eggs, 3 sperms, fuse it, put in a test tube, and wait for it to grow. And then they run through this PGS and what they think is good. The rest of the 2 is discarded. Or sometimes 3 may be good. They may have done 5 and they think 3 is good. They discard the 2, which is they think has some chromosomal issues or thing. And then they put the 3 into the mother. And then they wait for 12 weeks to happen. And then they send to us for the NT scan. And then at the time of NT scan, they choose to reduce 2 or 1 of the babies because they don't want to carry triplets. Triplets, when you have more babies inside you, you have a chance of miscarriage. So the argument that is presented by the gynecologist to the patient would be, if you carry on with triplet or quadruplet, sometimes 4 fetuses grow inside. Commonly, we are seeing this, triplets and quadruplets. If you have 4 babies growing in you, you have a chance of losing all 4. So you're doing a favor to the rest of the babies by choosing to stop 1 baby. You want to lose 4 babies or you choose to lose 2. This is what is being told and I just lose my mind. I call the doc and I say, why did you first put 3 or 4? They call me and ask, the last 3 months that our clinic is new. We've started it 3 months back. And I've got maybe some 10 requests for fetal reduction, like doctor, triplets, precious pregnancy. I said, no, I don't do it. Please send it to somebody else. Doctor, why don't you do it? I say, no, I don't like, it's just my personal choice. I don't do it. No, why don't you do it, doc? If you're not going to help the baby, because in COVID times, many the doctors who were doing the fetal reduction were not doing it. So many people were forcing me to do it, telling that, oh, that doctor is not available. I normally refer to the doctors who are doing it. So then they were like, no, that doctor is not available, doc, why don't you do it? I asked them, why did you put 3 inside then? No, doc, they can't spend that much money again. So because of all this commercialization and expensive treatment, people choose to do 5 or 6 embryos at one time, then put through the process of pregenital screening or pre-implantation diagnosis, and then put 3 inside. And then when they come to the 12th week, kill 2. This is the advancement of reproductive medicine and fetal medicine. Previously, you didn't even know how many babies were inside. Say 30 years back, when my brother was pregnant inside my mother, my mom told she had to go for an X-ray before delivery because she had passed her term. I'm talking about 1980s to 85s. We did not have ultrasound so commonly. 30 years down, almost 40 years down the line, we have reached another end of technology where you can not only diagnose what is inside your womb, you can diagnose what is inside the zygote. And you can choose to play with that. We doctors and the medical fraternity and the advances of technology, and including the patients and the mothers, we all are trying to play God. So areas where I feel this artificial reproductive technology or science is being misused. First is, this is what I spoke to you about, pre-implantation genetic diagnosis in IVF. I already told you what is PGS or PGD. Pre-implantation genetic diagnosis and pre-implantation genetic screening is a way for intended parents to prevent a pregnancy affected by a genetic condition or chromosomal disorder. Then next one is selective fetal reduction in ART. So you have put so many babies inside, then that job is ours. Fetal medicine comes, they send the babies to us. So we'll say, okay, all 5 babies are good. I have even seen 7 babies. Okay, all 7 babies are good and all this happened and all that. And then after another 2 weeks, they'll come back and say, doc, all babies are good. Will you see one more time? Okay, then we'll see one more time. And then they'll say, okay, now we decided we cannot carry, but she's having too much back pain. She's having that. Can you terminate a few of the babies? And then I'm like, oh, how do you choose which one you're going to have, which one you're not going to have? I don't know, they just like that. The one that is easily accessible to the needle is the one to go. So the ones which are way down and deeper, we avoid. Whichever is superficial, which will cause less chance of a miscarriage, are the ones to go. If every baby was normal. If there was an abnormal baby, yeah, we target that, and that baby is removed. But I mean, when I talk about we, I talk about the fetal medicine fraternity in general, not about myself. The baby which has got an abnormality, or the baby which is closest to the needle, not baby. Sometimes babies 2 or 3 are taken at one shot. When I did my training, my boss used to do it. And he's like, Rama, you have to learn. I understand you're a Christian. I understand you have a faith system, but you have to do it. So I'll say, no way. I have to. I told whatever I told my mother. I said, this is what happened, and I'm not going over my word. And then he'll put the needle into the baby's heart. And then he'll ask me to, he'll ask me to inject the KCL. I said, no way, I'm not assisting you. Then I will hold the needle and then he will inject the KCL. Potassium chloride is the drug that is injected into the baby's heart, which stops the baby's heart instantly. And then you should see that the baby shudders while the fetus shudders. You can see it shudder while its heart is being stopped. And then the third condition is sex-selective feticide. People, if they have, that is again a social thing. People want a boy, thinking that he's going to take care of them in their old age. They think that a boy is less expensive, boy is easy to manage. A girl has to be protected, first protected from rape, protected from the society, then dowry has to be given. A girl born is a headache throughout the rest of their life, is what Indian psychology and Indian thinking is. It is changing a lot, but still, even today morning, yesterday night, 11:30, I'm getting a call from my patient asking, Doc, can you tell me? My husband doesn't want to continue if it is a female. I just switched off my phone and I left it at it. But even now, there are people, educated people, who do not want to have a second female baby, leave alone 2 female babies and a 3rd female baby. They do not want to have a second female baby. Then termination. So these 3 conditions, it is grossly, I feel science and technology is being grossly misused. And then termination of pregnancies for non-fatal disorders. And people are offering termination just if the nasal bone is a little small, or for things which can be corrected, which is not going to affect the quality of life of the baby. Even for such conditions, for silly issues, people want. There is a condition called clubfoot, which is very much correctable. And 1 kidney may have an issue. 1 kidney is perfectly enough for the baby to survive. There is a dot in the baby's heart, which is called an echogenic intracardiac focus. It's all non-relevant issues, but people want to terminate the pregnancy. But in this picture, if you can see, this is the needle which is coming here. This is the fetus, and this white fluid that is there is the KCL that has been injected. I just wanted you all to see how it happens. Yeah. So what are we achieving? So what are we all achieving, and what is the society trying to do in all this? The society and humankind in general is moving towards perfection. Nobody wants a little bit of imperfection. And that is seen in the number of crimes that are happening, how people get angry for silly issues. Nobody can accept imperfection at any level, be it physical imperfection, mental imperfection. Any human being is unique. They would have their own pluses and negatives, physically, mentally, but nobody is willing to accept that. Everybody is striving to become the alpha humankind. That is the best possible version. And so the outcome of all this, they are trying, the reasons why all this is happening, what are we achieving by doing so many advances and terminating so many babies? We're trying to move towards perfection. We're eradicating the imperfectionists. What is it doing to us as a society? It is teaching us intolerance. The younger generation is becoming more and more intolerant, impatient, and more so with this COVID pandemic. The kids are all the time online, video games. They want an instant gratification. The game, they want to kill somebody on the video game, they can kill him immediately. In real life, they want that same thing. They want instant gratification. A baby has to be perfect. If anything is wrong, okay, it's just like a paper crushed and thrown. Get another one. Conceive. Yeah, doc, we can. When they say so easily, 3 months time, we'll get back to you, doc. We'll get back with another pregnancy. See you, doc, in 3 months time, is what they say. So instant gratification. Everything instantly. See, the baby can be carried on to 9th month, and then the baby can be delivered, and then the imperfection can be corrected. No. They want that in the imperfection set right immediately. They do not want to carry for the rest of the pregnancy an abnormal baby inside them. So intolerance, impatience, instant gratification, narrow-mindedness. It is making the people more and more narrow. They cannot tolerate anything else. They cannot tolerate autism. They cannot tolerate cerebral palsy. They cannot tolerate Down syndrome babies, which are actually very cute. And this leads to increased crime rate. So there is an altered sex ratio that is happening, more males to less females. Again, so more rape, more murders, more abortions keep happening. So that is what keeps happening. Just a minute. And what is, okay, now I would like to say a few verses from the Bible. The Bible doesn't talk in very specific terms about abortion, but it very clearly says that each baby that is formed in the womb, God has known it and has got a great plan for it before it is formed in the mother's womb. Okay, before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. This was told to Jeremiah 1:5. So God has a unique plan for each baby, even before it was formed in the mother's womb. But when he who has set me apart before I was born and had called me through his grace. So even before you were born, he has called you. How has he called you? By his grace. Galatians 1:15. The Bible says, for you form my inward parts. You wove me in my mother's womb. I will give thanks to you, for we are fearfully and wonderfully made in the God's own image. We are the only ones, only species in this world to be made in God's own image. We are very special. My frame was not hidden from you when I was made in secret. So God is the one who is giving life to that. When the sperm and the egg meet, who gives that life? It's God. Science has no answer to that. Where that which cell gave that life? No, we don't have an answer. We know what the sperm is a cell, the egg is a cell. They meet, and then they fuse, and then what happens? From where that heart starts beating just like that, we do not know. Okay, so that life is breathed into each fetus by God. God has a predestined plan for it. And who are we? Or who are we to stop God's plan? Who are we to know which baby to stop, which baby you want to continue? And then there are many people in the society now arguing that abortion is every woman's right. They say all women activists, female activists are like out on the streets saying that it is her right, but to know whether she wants to carry it in her womb or not. It is her body, and how she wants to treat her body is her right. Yes, how she wants to treat her body is her right, but she needs to know that before she can conceive too. I mean, it's her right whether she wants to conceive or not, but not after she has conceived. Before that, she has to plan it. She has to talk to her partner. She has to have the sense that if she conceives, that is a life inside her and that it cannot be. It is a woman's right, yes, but in what way? It is according to the Bible. Before you cannot, every being, everything that is formed inside you is a life inside a woman. And so if it is a woman's right, then what about the right of the baby that is being formed inside? Who will fight for the right of the unborn? So if so, what about the right to live of the unborn? Look at this cute baby. It's smiling inside the mama's tummy. So the baby is so, it is so fragile, and it is inside us, not knowing anything about the outside world. And people are just like that, like popping a pill. They're just popping pills and aborting and wiping out so many babies. And how many million babies are being unborn in India alone? So what are we going to do about it? And abortion actually amounts to murder. I mean, like, it's like stopping a life. I mean, we polishly say like it's stopping a life. We don't use the word, I mean, at least we doctors, we don't use the word murder to the patient. Like, why do you want to, I mean, even when we're trying to convince them not to do it, like, why do you want to stop it? It's already 4th month. You can just allow it to continue. And we try to convince, we still do not use the word, it's murder. But actually it is. And the law doesn't treat it like murder, but it is. It says that the woman has a right, but when an adult kills another adult, it is considered a murder. But when an adult kills a baby or a baby inside, it is not considered murder. But if I mean, I'm sure many of us women have gone through these conditions where, okay, is my periods postponed? I don't want to get pregnant now. We may have taken pills knowingly, unknowingly, but we do not have to blame ourselves because we have forgiveness in God. In case we have done it knowingly or unknowingly, all we have to do, the verse clearly says, like, he has called us through his grace, not by our strength, not by our power, not because we are smart, not because of that. We have been called by his grace, and by his grace we are forgiven, and by his grace we are healed. So in case any of us has done it, or it's okay, all we have to do is go to God. So, and as a doctor, when I think, what is the solution to this? What is the solution to this advancement in technology? What is the solution to all that is happening in regarding to this field of abortion? Contraception. Prevention is always better than cure. So it is our duty as mothers, our duty as elders or doctors to teach the upcoming generation, colleges, give them sex education, teach them. I mean, we are not willing to face the fact that premarital sex is happening in India. It is happening, and happening big time, in at least in metro cities and in villages too. It's commonly happening. So that the parents or the generation of parents are not willing to accept premarital sex is happening. Yes, that is an entirely different topic, but yes, it is happening. So then the college, so that they think that they need to teach the child about sex only when they're going to get married. But unfortunately, much of it is happening way before that. So sex education has been delayed in India, and I don't think any parent is educating the child even before married about. I mean, by then the child already knows by itself. The child needs to be educated in their teens for them to know and to prevent certain things. I mean, we don't want our children to carry scars in their hearts of traumas, of unwanted pregnancies or anything. So it is better to talk frank and blank, point blank to our kids, our daughters, our sons too, about sex and sex education and contraception. Again, contraception is a huge topic. There are eye pills, there are barrier contraceptives, there are oral contraceptive pills, and in what stage they prevent the pregnancy. I would suggest barrier contraception is the best because it prevents anything before anything meets anything. Or the natural method of following the ovulatory phase, I mean, calendar method we call it, would be better. That is very safe too. Ideally, barrier contraception is the best, but there are so many the contraception caters to the individual needs, like you're lactating, you're pregnant, you're lactating, you're in college, you're working, so it caters. Every person has an ideal suitable contraceptive that they can take. You're a hypertensive, you're a diabetic, I cannot take the OCP pill. Everybody, there is a contraceptive that will suit your body. So you need to find that, and you need to advocate it strongly to people you know, and especially to the upcoming generation. We all have a duty to teach our younger generation about sex and what are the side effects of it, and how contraception is very important. Because I feel prevention is better than cure, and rather than having unwanted pregnancies, let us prevent unwanted pregnancies. And if we do, let us try our best to continue the pregnancy and then decide what you're going to do with that baby. Thank you so much. Thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you, Dr. Mercy, for that very, very informative talk. And I think it has cleared a lot of doubts many of us might be having. Any questions, please, anyone? You could either put it up in the chat box or just unmute yourself and ask. Meanwhile, there's a question, Doctor.
Yes.
We can teach sex to children.
Yeah, I think when they reach menarche, or when we think they're hitting puberty, for boys and girls we physically know when they are hitting puberty. They start menstruating. For boys, when they start having the hair growth and they have their mood swings, is when their hormones are reaching, and that's when we can. I think around this present age group, 12 to 14 would be ideal for the time to start. Any other questions?
I had a question, Doctor. You had mentioned about the NT scan, that is when you scan for the chromosomal disorders.
Yeah.
So is that scan like normally, like in a normal pregnancy?
We do it routinely. First, we do
Or
it in pregnancy. We know it's done routinely.
okay.
Doctor, what is the condition of the statistics on rape in India? Because people try to justify abortion using this rape, but there are rapes, and that should be permitted, abortion in the case of rape. So in India, do you have any idea of the statistics of abortion, and how many people come to you who have been raped, and what are abortions, that kind of?
No, actually, I've been practicing post my MBBS for close to 14 years, and I haven't had a single person who's come to me after rape. But in my post graduation, I've seen one young girl who was 16-year-old who came to us 9 months pregnant. She didn't even know that she was pregnant. She was a 16-year-old girl, and she came to the government hospital. I did my PG in Madras Medical College, so she had come there. So that was the only case of pregnancy and rape that I have seen. And it's very rare, actually.
Okay. And also, how many months do they allow in India, and how many months can people do an abortion till? I mean, like, is it the entire term, 9 months?
It's been legalized up to 6 months now, 24 weeks to be exact.
Okay.
Yeah. And beyond that, if the baby has any abnormalities, you can go up to the medical board, and the medical board can approve or disapprove based on how lethal the abnormality is.
Okay, thanks.
Dalia, I was answering your question. We do early pregnancy scan in the 5th to the 7th month. We do the NT scan around the 12th week. And then we do the anomaly scan in the 20th week. Then we do the growth scan 28 weeks and 36 weeks. So these 5 scans are done routinely for everybody.
There's another comment. I deal with sickle cell and thalassemia patients.
Sam, please talk to me. I mean, I saw the question, but it's too much to answer on the chat. So, Sam, I didn't understand the question. You said something that you are dealing with sickle cell anemia and thalassemia, and that you had an amniocentesis report saying sickle cell disease, is it?
Yeah, it was parent. They were traits, and they had to undergo amniocentesis.
Okay.
So after the trait, the amniocentesis report came out as sickle cell disease, chances of sickle cell disease.
Okay.
So I had a half an hour talk with them, but I could not. Finally, I came to a conclusion that you can decide to abort. That's
okay.
what. Yeah.
Okay. No, sickle cell disease means that they will definitely have sickle cell anemia, and so, but it is very treatable. If the parents have survived till now, I mean, we see so commonly so many parents who are suffering with sickle cell anemia. Yeah, it is a very difficult thing to handle. The baby will keep getting will require blood transfusion, and there will be a little bit of quality of life comes down, but doesn't mean that you have to go ahead and terminate the pregnancy.
Doctor, do you have any idea of, when does the fetus, the baby actually, start feeling pain? Because when I normally get into abortion, these arguments with people, me being pro-life, people usually say that there's no pain like for many months, so abortion is okay. They justify it. So, do you have any idea? Can you tell me, like, does the fetus feel pain as soon as the when the heart starts beating, the neurons,
This video would have shown you. This video is around the 12th week, 11th week. When you put the needle, the baby just shrugs away from the needle. The baby knows that something is entering. It doesn't like it. You can see the baby moving away, and they do feel the pain. And see, when you're pressing hard with a probe, when we are doing an ultrasound and we press hard, the baby knows when you're pressing too hard. It does feel it.
So is there some way for you to...
I would tell, if you want me to put a timeline on it, I think right from the time it's conceived. Any other questions? I hope you all found this useful.
There is a comment, when aborting, the baby moves towards the mother to safeguard from the abortionist.
Whether a baby moves?
It's a comment. When aborting, the baby moves towards the mother to safeguard from the abortionist.
Okay. I mean, I am not, I mean, we as doctors, we are not able to see while we are doing it, because abortions are generally done not under ultrasound guide. It's a blind procedure. Only when we fetal medicine people, when we do the what do you call, under the needle, that when we inject potassium chloride, we do it under ultrasound guidance.
There's another question. Is it sin for a rape victim to abort her fetus?
I think definitely yes. So I'm playing the video now. Can you all see?
Yes.
See, this long line that you're seeing is the baby, and the baby is moving. Can you see the heart beating over here? This is another baby. Okay, this is a triplet pregnancy. Okay, I don't know how to play it in loop either. See, when the injection is given, the baby will suddenly move, like it got a shock. Okay, I think you all have seen it. Any other questions, or shall we conclude?
Any more questions? If not, we thank Dr. Mercy for this talk. And there is a comment here. It says, it's very encouraging when we see the lives of Nick Vujicic and Tim Tebow and others whose mothers, despite knowing about their health condition, continued with the child. It's the grace of God that made these children into iconic figures today. Let's praise God for the faith that he had. Thank you once again, Dr. Mercy.
Thank you.
Excuse me, shall I comment one thing? One of the question was what age we can give sex education for the children.
Yes.
On that, I just want to comment.
Yes.
As soon as the child, when the child is 2 years or 2.5 years, as soon as the child asks the questions to the mother or father, how do I come from, or where do I come from? That is the first question a child asks the mother or father. So we need to understand the child's mind and how much the child understands. From that time onwards, we can give sex education. That's my point, my opinion. Sex education starts at home.
Yes.
By the mother, especially by the mother at the very earliest stage. Even I will say that before 3 years old. Some people say at the puberty you have to give sex education. Why I want to tell that? In Bishop Cotton High School in Bangalore, one of my relatives is teaching that. So she told, after the people came and gave sex education to the children, the girls, and when they were leaving, she heard a comment that now we know how to use the condom. So that was the comment of the girls she heard. So she painfully told me, this is what girls are telling. So the sex education should not start at school at the age of puberty or before puberty. It has to be started by the mother, very earliest age, as the child asks the question, how do I come from, who am I, a boy or girl? So from through the 2.5 years or 3 years of age, we can give the sex education that you are a boy or you are a girl, you are made in the image of God, and all these things we can start.
I would like to say something. I think, more than all those things, I think, as you said, it can start at home when a parent can train the child and tell the child, and it happens in schools also, what is a good touch, what is a bad touch. I guess that's where we start with. And then gradually, as the child grows big, I think then we can go step by step, uh, and use God's wisdom, not just, download everything to the child and yeah. What would Dr. Ramya say?
Yeah, I think so. I think good touch and bad touch is being taught in every school, right
Exactly.
from first grade onwards, because of so many incidents happening in the school itself with the male teachers and so many incidents. Good touch and bad touch is being taught very early, but then it's a duty of the parents to take it to the next level. And I would like to reply to one comment here from Rebecca Wasson. She says, I'm sorry, with all due respect, it's irresponsible and unethical of you to imply that fetal abnormalities tend to occur only when mothers have aborted the first pregnancy. I never said that it happens only when. I said, in my experience, majority when I have seen and when I probe to many lethal abnormalities or recurrent fetal abnormalities, when I probe down, and I said that there is no study that's published on this regard. This is just my opinion. Probably I should start to do a study on this. These were my exact words. I never said that it is published or there is a study. No, definitely not. I do not know why it happens, but many times in my experience, whenever I've come as a fetal medicine consultant practicing for the last 6 years, whenever I've come across something that is recurrent or untreatable or it's happening again and again despite the parents trying to conceive, when we go back to the history and try, they would have stopped 1 or 2 pregnancies. Thank you, Rebecca, for your question. Anything
Yeah,
else?
I just wanted to put just a doubt. Your area of interest is amniosynthesis. So, is there any other cheaper methods of getting prenatal genetic testing done?
No. Amniocentesis is the cheapest way. There is something called a non-invasive prenatal testing, in which you can take the blood of the mother and send it to the labs, but they are even more expensive. And some Indian labs do it for a little less price than amniocentesis, but then it is 99% accurate. NIPT doesn't give you 100% accuracy. The best way would be amniocentesis.
Doctor, you spoke about this PGD thing, right? It was what was that you said about the zygote? When is it? It's a 3-cell
stage or the 5 cells. Yeah, they do it. They do the pre-genetic screening or it's called pre-implantation genetic screening, or pre-implantation is in the test tube before they implant it into the mother. So before that, they go through the screening.
So this IVF thing and stuff, what people do is actually, it involves the killing of life.
No, not necessarily, not all the time.
Okay.
Yeah, because it can be done without loss of life too.
Okay.
Right. So I think no more questions. So thank you, Dr. Mercy. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.